So they look at me, I look at them, they look at me, and I'm looking back at them. And I say, how am I gonna do that? Because I had a natural unmedicated birth at a birthing center. Today we are here to talk about the actual birth story. Now, you always have to trust your intuition. There are so many instances, even with a birth center birth, you know, out of hospital birth or whatever, to where you're still having to advocate for yourself. And even after the baby's born, you're gonna have to advocate for that baby. I had to do it 3 days after he was born at the pediatrician's office before I switched to a holistic pediatrician, which we could talk about that at another time as well. I will say that I loved the birth center birth, but there is always gonna be that level of advocation, even if it's just because people don't know you like you know you. So the way that it worked at my particular birthing center is there is a group of midwives. You meet with each of them during your prenatal visits so that whoever you end up getting, you're at least familiar with. I love everybody who worked at this birth center. They're all really amazing. The day of, I had my doula, who I picked. She's a Black woman. She was one of 2 Black women in the room. The other one, I think, was like a midwife in training who was just writing down the transcript of everything that happened. And then there were 2 midwives. There was one who was like the leader of the whole entire pack. She's pretty much runs the birth center. And there was another one who's technically in training, but that doesn't mean that she lacked skills. She's been doing this for a long time. To my understanding, it takes a while to become a midwife. And then obviously my husband was the best birthing partner I could have ever imagined. He was everything, so supportive, so calm, advocated for me. He was just incredible, no notes. So I was in labor for just over 24 hours, almost 24 hours on the dot. It's so crazy to be in that much pain for that long, but the whole thing wasn't as painful as it was at the end. I should say that. Like, it starts off painful and you're like, it feels like, you know, regular menstrual cramps, and then it just progresses and progresses and progresses to the point where it felt for me like, okay, this is getting pretty unbearable. But it's not that painful the whole entire time. Like, it definitely comes in stages. Saw some slight signs that I was gonna be going into labor, and I had a checkup with one of the midwives. I believe this was on like a Thursday. The midwife told me, she was like, the baby could either come, you know, tomorrow or over the weekend, or the baby could come a week from now. But I knew in my heart the next day, by Friday, I was like, I'm going into labor tomorrow. And one of the ways that I knew, I was in extreme nesting mode. I was cleaning things. I was repotting my sour sops. I was like tidying everything up and tying a bow on it. And I just knew. I even did a video where I talked about the fact that I felt like I was going into labor the next day, and I will post that right here. Today is Friday and I have been baking and cleaning like a maniac, and I cannot help but feel like as soon as I'm done doing all of these things that I feel like I need to do, I'm gonna go into real labor. I've been having contractions today, but they haven't been consistent, and I feel like things are gonna turn up once everything is everything and it smells good and the floor is vacuumed and all of that. Like, I feel like that's when it's gonna be go time. So we'll see. So yeah, my intuition was blaring, telling me that this was gonna happen. The next day at just before 4 a.m., I end up going into labor. I'm feeling some contractions, some discomfort. I wake up and I tell my husband, hey, track this. We're counting the contractions, and immediately they were like 4 to 5 minutes apart. Immediately they were lasting for like 45 seconds to 1 minute. And that is around the time where they tell you to contact your birth care team. Then I waited until the sun came up in order to contact somebody from my birth team. So I call at around 6 something in the morning, and they're like, hey, do you want to come in at 8 so we can check you? I'm like, nah, 8 seems a little bit early. And they're like, okay, so do you want to do 11? I'm like, sure, cool, I'll come in at 11. I just knew that nothing was gonna happen in that time.
You're doing okay though.
Mm-hmm. And it's not easy, but it's okay.
All right, it is 11:41. We're headed to the birthing center. How we doing, babe?
It's 95 degrees outside, and I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
Check in with y'all later.
So originally off the bat, I was about 4 to 5 centimeters dilated and about 75% effaced or thinned out. My cervix was, but my uterus was like not in the right position, and it really hurt. Like when she went to check my cervix, which I was kind of on the fence on if I wanted to do like the cervical checks or not, but I did want to kind of get an idea of how far along I was so that I can, like, you know, just see what was going on down there. So I did end up opting for that. And when she checked, it's like she had to reach around my uterus, and that hurt like so much. That was like top 3 pains that I experienced, next to actually pushing the baby out in the ring of fire and all that, and the contractions. They're like, this is probably gonna happen today, but this is not gonna happen right now. You gotta do these different maneuvers and stuff like that in order to move things around so that your baby can come out with ease. So I'm like, okay, cool. So you have 2 options. You can either labor here or you can go home. I said, you know what? I live up the road. Don't worry about me. Y'all will see me when it's time to have this baby. I'm doing these stretches. I'm on the peanut ball. I'm on the yoga ball. I'm still in a good mood. I can't eat. I can't drink. I'm literally throwing up water and biscuits and things that you would think should settle my stomach. I'm throwing those things up. So that was kind of miserable, but at that point I was still feeling okay. So they're like, yeah, let's meet back here at 5 o'clock. So I meet back there. They're like, okay, so you are about 6 centimeters dilated, which doesn't seem like a big jump, but it actually is. And I believe at that point I was about 80% thinned out. They're like giving me all these different tactics and stuff to get the baby out. One of the things that they had me do was lay back on like a birthing stool, and my husband was behind me, and I was just like laying there, and that was one of the things that was supposed to help get my uterus in the right position. And then the other thing, they had me be mobile, because a lot of birth is about moving around and being mobile, like not sitting there and being still, like switching things up to kind of like coax the baby out. They had me walk around in between contractions, and on a contraction they would have me put my leg up on the bed and do a lunge into it. When they told me that, I said, excuse me, like, what is it that you saying that you want me to do? I tried it. I did it more than a few times, and it was so painful. At that point, the contractions were so strong, and that was making me feel like I was being put on a skewer, and I just did not have it in me. And they were saying, like, you know, we want to make sure that you're going to have the stamina for this, you know, because you can't eat or drink or anything. We want you to like work this out so that you can have this baby before you get too tired. But I knew in my heart and in my mind and in my soul, if I keep doing this crazy nonsense mumbo jumbo, because the baby's not coming tonight, I'm gonna get tired and I'm not gonna be able to do it anyway. So how about I go home again and I come back when things are really popping off. We end up coming back at around 9 o'clock. By that time, it's freaking go time. I'm in so much pain. I'm like bleeding a little, like I'm in the shower. I'm just trying to get relief. I'm like on my hands and knees, like, please. At first it started off cute. We were listening to FAMU, Marching 100 music on the birth ball, being all cutesy. I was listening to Kendrick, Not Like Us, rapping the songs and all that. By that time, I don't want to talk. I never got to the point to where I was like cussing folks out or like snapping or anything. I'm still having like a humor about it, but at that point I was like, okay, this is hard. So we get back to the birthing center, and by that time they said that I think I was like 8 centimeters dilated and maybe like 100% thinned out. So they're like, girl, you can get into the birthing pool now. So I'm like, cool, because I really thought I was gonna have a water birth. Like I really thought I was gonna have one. That's really not how it ended up working out. But I was happy to just to get into the water, because I felt like this is gonna be soothing. It's gonna be relaxing. The water was hot, but it was one of those situations to where it was hot until you're in there for a little while. You know, when you like go into a jacuzzi or you're getting your toes done and it's like so hot and you're like, oh my gosh, this is hot, to the point where it's like unbearable. And then eventually it kind of gets like lukewarm. That's what happened. So my husband was in there with me, and I'm just like going through it. Like all the pictures I have are not for the internet, y'all. First of all, whole entire coochie was out. Second of all, yitties was just everywhere. And then I'm just like leaning back like this, and he's behind me, and I'm just like clearly out of it. Like it was not the vibe. So I'm trying to like move and do different maneuvers, because I'm thinking like, I gotta get this baby out of me. Once I got back on that bed and they checked my cervix, I was 10 centimeters dilated, 100% thinned out. My water had not broken yet. And so the lady who's checking me says, oh, can we break her water? And I don't know if it was because the baby's head was like right there on the water bag or what, but the other midwife says, oh no, she's gonna have to break it herself. Excuse me. So they look at me, I look at them, they look at me, and I'm looking back at them. And I say, how am I gonna do that? And they say, you're gonna have to push on contractions. Like, what are you talking about? Push on contractions to break the water? I have never heard of that in my whole entire life, but apparently that was my journey. I go to the edge of the bed. My husband is sitting on the bed, if y'all could just picture this, and he's holding me, my arms like this, and I'm squatted at the side of the bed, just pushing for my life on contractions. I'm saying to them, my butthole is coming out of my butthole. This is crazy. And they're like, that's how it's supposed to feel, mama. I'm like, girl. Eventually, I'm just like, is there anything else that I can do? And they're like, well, you can either do this or you can do that lunge thing onto the bed that you was doing earlier. And I said, absolutely not. That is out of the question. I'm not doing that. Like, I literally almost died last time. I'm not doing it again. And they're like, you'd be surprised, mama. Some things feel bad in one stage of labor and they feel good at another stage. I'm like, ain't no way. I'll pass. So my husband's time to shine had arrived yet again. And he's like, can she get on all fours? And thank you to that man, because that is really what did it for me. They were like, oh yeah, actually she can. So I'm over the birthing stool and he's holding my arms. So I'm on the bed, if this even makes sense. Maybe I'll try to like draw a diagram. I don't know, like right here. My husband is standing on the outside of the bed. I'm on the bed over the birthing stool and he's holding my arms for me so that I can get some, you know, some support. When I'm pulling towards myself with all of my might and everything in my body, he's like giving me this counter pressure so that I'm not hitting myself in the face and so that I can just like go all out and give it my all. Eventually, as I'm pushing in this way, I hear a water balloon pop and it's like Busch Gardens behind me. That was the water bag. It broke and I said, oh my God, what was that? And they're like, yeah, you did it. However, there was meconium in the water. And if you guys don't know what meconium is, it's the baby's first poop. And when that happens before they come out, a lot of times that could be a sign of fetal distress. So they say to each other and the room, if she doesn't keep progressing, or if her heart rate or the baby's heart rate fluctuates too much, she's gonna have to go to the hospital. So I hear that and I'm thinking to myself, wow, it's go time. I verbally out loud said, oh yeah, not giving up. Okay, I know that's there's our girl. Yeah. I go into the portal. I receive my baby from my mother's loving hands within minutes. And during that time, there was a lot of pain involved. I did feel the ring of fire. Yes, it is very intense, but it only lasts for a little while. Like, it really does not last that long. And the thing is with this ring of fire situation is that you want it to go by fast, but you can't rush it, because if you rush it, you increase your likelihood of tearing. And with each contraction, it feels like the baby's coming out, and then in, and then out, and then in a little bit. All of this stuff, I'm telling you, it was intense, very intense, but I did it without any medication at all. If I can do it, and this is a journey that you want to go on, I believe that you can too. But after like the head was out, after that, the body just came shortly after, and it felt like they quite literally snatched my soul out, and that was very intense. Okay. I had to take a brief intermission because the baby had swim class and I had to bathe him and all that. So yes, we are back. In the next 3 days after that, I felt like I was using this analogy of the portal. Like, I went to meet my mom in the portal and called my baby spirit to me so that he can, you know, come out in the outside world in his human form. And it felt like I was still in that birthland place for at least 3 days afterwards. And then the first 2 weeks was like very, very odd to me, and then after 6 weeks I could say that I felt like myself again. But it really felt like I was somewhere else. Like, I locked in. My husband was like, I never seen that person that you were, or whoever you were in that moment, I've never seen that before. But it was just, for me, the drive to make sure that I did not get transferred to the hospital. If you went to the hospital, if you had a C-section, if you had an epidural, I hope that you had a safe experience, and I hope that you had one that was in alignment with what your desires were for your birth. But that's just not what I was going for. So I did everything that I could possibly do in order to avoid that from happening. So yeah, y'all, after 24 hours and change of labor, after going to the birth center 3 separate times in order to have this baby and having to rely on my intuition and my husband having to advocate for me, after going into the portal to receive my baby and coming back a different and changed person, when the baby came out and they put that baby down there in front of me as I'm on my knees, the only thing that my silly tail self could come up with to say is, oh my God, what do I do? Those were literally the first words that I had once the baby came out. I was just like, what do I do? The thing that was going in through my mind why I was like, what do I do, is because I was concerned about the length of the cord, and if I like grabbed him and picked him up and brought him to my chest, I was concerned that the cord was gonna tug and that was gonna hurt. And you know, so I was just like, is the cord long enough? They were like, yeah girl, pick up your baby. So I pick him up and I put him on me, and I'm like, can you guys move all this nastiness from under me? There's like all these like doggy wet pads on the bed, and I'm sitting there in all of this mess, okay? And the baby is just there, right there. I looked up at my husband, he was already so emotional, and then I'm looking at the baby and I'm like, can y'all move all this nastiness out from under me? Cause girl, no. And my doula was like, oh yeah, she's back. Like, yeah girl, I am not gonna be sitting in all of that. So they moved all the stuff out the way. I leaned back with the baby and I'm just like in complete shock and amazement. And I'm just like, oh my God, he's here. He's so beautiful. And like my husband, he came and sat next to me on the bed. We're like marveling at this beautiful human that has just come earthside. Honestly, he looked a lot like cleaner than I thought he was going to look. Of course he had like stuff on him, but he didn't have like any type of like real thick vernix or anything. His skin just looked kind of, you know, like it had been in water for a really long time, for the past 9 months. We did delayed cord clamping. And so what that means is that you leave the umbilical cord attached until it turns white. And that's what we did. Once the blood was done pumping into my baby, because the placenta is his organ and that was all of his blood, I wanted to make sure that he got everything that he deserved. And I need that to be a principle in his life, him coming and getting everything that he deserves. So to me, it was very symbolic. My husband cut the cord, and then it was time for me to push out the placenta, which is something that a lot of people I feel don't talk about when they talk about childbirth. And to me, I honestly have this feeling that needs to change in society, that once somebody has a child, then the attention tends to shift elsewhere. And I think that the lack of information or people talking about what happens directly after the baby's born, meaning the person has to birth the placenta, I think that the fact that that's not even talked about a lot is a testament to the fact that people kind of just move on after the baby's born. I really want to talk about this because it is something that happens, that must happen, or else you can literally get an infection. Around, I want to say maybe 20 minutes later, uterus will contract so that it can release that placenta. And sometimes they'll actually like push on your stomach to kind of coax that placenta out. So that's what happened to me. It hurt really bad in my case. I know it hurts for other people too, but I'm sure there are people who pass it really easy. They examine it to make sure that all the parts are there and there's nothing left inside of you, because it's not your organ. It's supposed to all come out. 45 minutes into all of this happening, and we're looking at this gorgeous baby, the midwife finally comes up and she's like, so what are you guys gonna name him? And the thing is, we hadn't even thought about what we're gonna name him like this whole time. Like, we kind of had some names that we were throwing around before, but I wasn't like calling him anything specific long term while he was still inside of me. And once he came out, like, we hadn't thought about the name, not once. We were just like so into what was going on right in front of us. So at that point, I let my husband decide what the final name is going to be, the combination that we had, and he named him, and that was a really beautiful moment. So after that, they wanted to make sure that I could get up and walk to the bathroom myself. They also wanted to make sure that I ate something before I left. So my husband went to go get the food that I had meal prepped beforehand, and he brought it back so that I can have a meal. They weigh the baby, they put the clothes on the baby, and it was so cute because his clothes looked so big on him. I was like, are those too big? It was the newborn size, and they're like, no, this is actually perfect. So it's just so crazy because now that I see the little newborn clothes, they're so tiny, and the baby's so big now. Like, he is in the 95th percentile for height. He's a really tall boy. So yeah, after that, the midwife, and I say all this to say, like, this is not a horror story, because after all this transpired, I'm just chatting away as if I didn't just push out a whole human. And the midwife asked me if I need any medication like Tylenol or ibuprofen to go home with. And at that moment, I realized, wow, I haven't asked her any medication throughout any of this. Granted, there was one point where I was like fantasizing, like, wow, some people go in the hospital and they like get an epidural, and there's a lot of this that they don't even have to feel. Wow, what that must be like. But I never voiced that because I felt like if I voiced it, I would be on track to that, you know what I mean? So I didn't say anything. And then once it was like go time and I was really like in it and the baby was out and stuff, it wasn't even a thought like, hey, go home with some medication. So I was just like, wow, I really like powered through this, and I felt really proud of myself then. And everybody in the room was like, yeah, you killed it, you're a rock star, like, you know, you didn't even ask for it once. Not that, like I said, if that's your journey and that's what you want to do, that's completely fine by me. It ain't none of my business. But I was just really pleased to have had the birthing experience that I wanted. And after that, I want to say I was at the birth center for maybe 3 hours after the birth. And by the time we were ready to go, the sun was rising and we went home. It made me feel like I did something for my baby that was good. Like, I did what was in alignment for our two souls. To me, I did that. I will say I had one of those types of painkillers on maybe the second day after birth, because another thing they don't tell you is that as your uterus is contracting down to size, sometimes it could feel a lot like birthing pains, and that's definitely what I felt. My abdomen hurt so bad that I threw up twice from the pain. And then after that, the only other thing that I can say I really didn't like was we had to go to appointments in the days after, and I just don't feel like it makes sense to ask a person who just had a baby to get in their car and go somewhere the day after their birth. Usually this particular group of midwives come to you, but they had like a hearing screening thing that they were doing for free at the birth center. So they were like, yeah, y'all can just come in and get it for free. And we made the mistake of going and doing that. And it just took a lot out of me. And then the pediatricians like to see the baby within, I want to say 48 hours of their birth. So that appointment took a lot out of me. It's just, those next few days were definitely the trenches, but the experience in and of itself was incredible. I can say that I would 1000% do a natural birth again. Like, I would even do a home birth. I feel like I can do this. I felt extremely powerful to the point where sometimes I sit and I'm like, you know, I feel like I could do this again. And then I have to like reel myself back in, because girl, and you're not ready for that. I saw myself in a light that I have never seen myself before, and my life has transformed. Like, who I am has transformed since having this baby. He is the best thing that ever happened to me. Oh, and real quick, because I know people are gonna be curious, and I'm not here to, you know, be weird with y'all. The price for the at-home birth, I believe, would have been like $6,600 or something like that. And the price for the birth center birth, it was between like $7,200 and $8,000, something like that. If your insurance can cover it, because a lot of times in your state, they're required to cover an out-of-hospital birth. So if there's a place local to you, then you can go there. But if there's not, then you would have to do something called a gap exception, which is what I did, where basically you tell your insurance, hey, there's not a place within 30 miles radius of where I live, so I need y'all to cover this because y'all are obligated to cover an out-of-hospital birth for me. Sometimes it takes a really long time to get your money back, and you'll have to pay up front and get your money back after, which is the case with me. I'm still waiting on my coin. But, you know, that's pretty much how that goes. And then what that cost covers, at least in my case, all your prenatal visits when you're visiting with the midwives. It covers the birthing center day of, and like if you decide to use a pool or something, it'll cover the pool sometimes. And then there were other things that I had to do that were like an extra charge on top, which is like sometimes blood work or something. If you have to go to like Quest or LabCorp for blood work, so you'll have to pay that. Yeah, some things are a little bit extra money, but it's just like a case-by-case situation. So yeah, that is my beautiful birth story of how I birthed my baby at a birthing center completely unmedicated. I felt like I was in the wilderness, and I came out with the biggest prize ever. I'm happy that we're just both here and we're safe and happy and healthy and completely in love with each other. So yeah. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comment section below. As usual, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Follow all my social media accounts right down there, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.